Hey guys, welcome. It is Bible Scribe. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to do a quick video. I got a question asked to me in a viewer comment on one of my previous videos that just simply asked me what I thought the difference between partial preterism and full preterism is. And as I thought about the answer to that question, I realized I was going to have a hard time explaining that. And I think as we go through this short list, this is going to be a very short video. This short list of things that I have heard both from partial preterists and from full preterists about their positions. I think you'll understand why I had a hard time just answering very quickly. You'd think that the answer to the question, what's the difference between partial and full preterism, would be simple. But let's look at that real quick. I just want to go through this list, and at the end, I'm going to give you the mandate. Can you please put what you think these terms mean in the comments? Because I think there's a huge problem right now in the camp of preterism because there are only these two terms to use to describe yourself, and they may or may not embody the beliefs of the people who claim the names or the terms. So let's real quick look at this information. It's a short list of things that partial preterists believe and then of full preterists that I've heard. And this is just my experience. I've looked on websites and stuff for this, trying to figure out is there some definitive explanation of the difference. And I really have had a hard time finding that. You have to ask yourself first, what sites are authoritative? Who really knows? But anyway, let's go into my list so you'll see my dilemma here. For partial preterists, generally partial preterist believes that there is some prophecy in the Bible that is yet to come to pass. That being said, there's an acknowledgement with anyone that's preterist that many events in AD 70 and prior were fulfillment of prophecies that had been given by Christ and in the Old Testament. But here's a list of some things that I've heard from partial preterists or about partial preterists. Some believe that Jesus will come again to the earth, physically on the earth. And some believe that Jesus will not come again, but that some prophecy is still yet to be fulfilled. So I've heard some partial preterists that they don't believe Jesus is coming again, but they do believe some prophecy is unfulfilled. And so the full preterist camp rejects them, but they themselves don't like being lumped into the partial preterist camp. And of course, some partial preterists have a mix of these two, whether they place the second coming of Christ in the future or the past or what. There's this mix between different people in the partial preterist camp. And then some will interpret portions of prophecy symbolically, but other portions literally, even sometimes in the same passages. And I wish I had more time to go into examples of this, but I've either heard this from partial preterists or it been said about partial preterists. So I'm not accusing anyone here, but just so we understand, there is a huge divergence among those who claim that title of their beliefs. Some do have a somewhat inconsistent hermeneutic, I think, and that is an argument that's levied against them by full preterists and secularists alike. But then some partial preterists don't, and it's just a matter of the way they interpret. Some partial preterists, now this definition is a pretty standard definition of partial preterism, and this definition is just based on the major prophetic eschatological events. And they would say that the Great Tribulation is fully past, but the things that are not fully past in our past already are the second coming of Christ, the death of the devil, the general resurrection of the dead, and the great white throne judgment. That none of those would have been fulfilled, but they do believe the Great Tribulation was fulfilled in AD 70. So I think that's possibly a good description of where most partial preterists would stand. Now, excuse me, onto the full preterist list. So full preterists, generally speaking, you could say they believe that all prophecy in the Bible has come to pass and is done, finished. I think most full preterists would say this. There's probably a small portion that would not say this, but most say that every prophecy that was mentioned in scriptures, and they mean by that the 66 books of the Bible, has come to pass and is fulfilled. Virtually all full preterists say that every prophecy in the Bible was fulfilled. So, like I stated, most full preterists interpret a lot of prophecy, if not all of it, symbolically and not literally. Think about that. And this is something I've run across. Most full preterists interpret most prophecy symbolically and not literally or physically in any sense. Many full preterists are covenant eschatologists, a la Don Preston. If you know anything about full preterism or the movement or the different factions, and I will use that word factions because that's what I think it is, out there, that Don Preston leads one of these, and his eschatology is covenant eschatology. And I'm about to do another video on his views. But leaving all that aside, just to say that many full preterists out there are of this Don Preston camp, and they use his arguments as far as covenant eschatology is concerned. Many full preterists believe that the law, because the law was fulfilled, and because they equate sin with disobedience to the law, they say that you can't sin anymore because they believe the law was completely done away with in AD 70. And because they think that sin is so connected, tightly coupled to Mosaic law, they think you cannot sin anymore, no matter what you do, right or wrong. And again, this is not all, but it's some. In fact, a lot of the full preterists I've met talk about it this way. There is a small portion of full preterists that believe that the Bible has zero bearing on our lives anymore, and that they are almost completely atheist in their belief set. Same as atheists who believe, we have no culpability for sin because sin's not a thing and God's not a thing. In the same way, these full preterists who believe that because the Bible and all of eschatology had to do with Israel and was completely done in the first century, that it has no bearing on our modern lives anymore. And there are full preterists out there who call themselves full preterists that take this approach. And I have a different video that compares atheism and universalism, and it goes over some of these very same issues that are in the full preterist camp right now. And then along with that other definition that I gave of partial preterism, in relationship to the actual events of eschatology, the Great Tribulation, the Second Coming, the death of the devil, the general resurrection of the dead, a full preterist, almost all full preterists would say those are all past and in our history, and none of them will come in our future at all. So those are my two lists. Now, just to boil it down, the only real commonalities I was able to find, like between all the partial preterists and all the full preterists, was to say these two very brief statements, and that is that partial preterists believe there is prophecy in the Bible that has yet to come to pass. And then the full preterist statement would be they believe that all prophecy in the Bible has already come to pass. Now, I think this would concern 99.999% of all partial and full preterists, that these two statements would apply in each of those cases. However, I want to say that within those camps, there's huge divergence between opinions on eschatology and which events have happened, which haven't, and the historicity of some, the literalness of some versus the symbolic aspects of prophecy, and then the spiritual aspect, which I think is mostly ignored by both camps, the spiritual quality of prophecy. And that's part of what in my videos I try to really focus on, because I think most people, modern times, ignore the spiritual aspect of the Bible and of Bible prophecy. And I think people in preterism are as susceptible as anyone to those problems. But we have to see that there's always a spiritual component to everything in the Bible, as well as a physical, literal component. And I'm not talking about symbological, no symbology. I'm not talking symbols. There are very few symbols used in prophecy. Um, but anyway, I wanted to present these two lists just so you could sit here and think about this and think with me. Because as I did my first very, very popular video about when I came into the belief of preterism. And when I said that, I meant a historical view of a lot of Jesus prophecy in the first century. But I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was getting into as far as the camps of partial and full preterism and the wide divergence of opinions in those camps between them and outside them. And if you want to know the bare, honest truth, I do not put myself in either of those camps with my beliefs. Yes, some are common to both camps, but I do not wear, I'm getting to where I don't want to wear the label of either partial or full preterist because of the stigma that comes with each of those labels. I think it's something that we as Christians who are, I think, understanding some of the historicity of prophecy and the reality of what God did in the first century, we have to be careful also of the labels and the baggage that comes with those labels. Because I don't think that the traditional Orthodox view of either partial or full preterists has everything right. So, that being said, please put in the comments of this video your ideas on what does partial preterist really mean? What does full preterist really mean? If you can, help me consolidate these ideas into something meaningful, because right now, all I see when I go online and I get responses from different full or partial preterists, I get a wide variety on both sides. And I don't see a lot of commonality between among the adherents to each of those different camps. So putting this out for you, please give me comments about this. What do you think? Like and subscribe if you can. Help me build the channel. And I appreciate you. God bless.